host, Rick Ginn, and today we're talking about finding the best zip codes for you to get the best virtual wholesaling market. And it's kind of weird because I actually feel like I've cracked the code and I feel like nobody talks about this. And one of the biggest questions I get from you guys is, what's the best area to start? And I am a huge advocate of breaking stuff down by zip codes, because sometimes a general city or a county is not enough to get exactly what you want. So if you guys don't know me, my name is Rick Ginn. I've been wholesaling for 20 plus years. It's somewhat of an affliction. I'm one of the guys that actually truly enjoys this business. So you're going to see a lot of people come in and out of wholesaling like it's this quick fad. And I think I have passed that test. We're talking about finding the best areas for your virtual markets. I've already told you that zip codes is the way to go. So what you have to understand first is what makes a good or bad area. Well, before I get into like the dynamics of how to pick your market, number one, a lot of common sense goes a long way in wholesaling. So you don't need everybody to tell you everything to do. And guys, here's what I want you to understand. I've tried every type of property known to mankind. Multi-million-dollar mansions, $10 million commercial properties, down to $3,000 crack house. I've experienced them all. They all have their ups and downs. And what you need to do if you're starting out is find that sweet spot, the spot that you're going to have the most opportunity. And what you have to understand is what makes an area good, what makes an area bad. We're specifically talking about wholesaling. Okay, guys, you are not living in these properties. So some of you have set your standards so high and you're looking at like $500,000 plus houses. That's not where you start in wholesaling. Actually, it's quite the opposite. So let's get into it. So the first thing you have to understand, the sweet spot. And guys, this is common sense. Actually, you don't even need me and Zach to tell you this, is you look for areas with low crime and low starting price entry points. So what you have to do is basically find it. So your next question is, Rick, well, how do I find these? So since all of this is local information, you're going to have to get in that market locally. Now, the beauty about this is all statistical information that can easily be had with an internet search or a simple phone call and possibly an email. That's it, period. So if you're just starting out and you haven't picked out your market, this is the perfect live stream for you. So yes, it's live. So here's what you do. The first thing is the crime stats. You can get dated information on the internet, and usually from your local sheriff's office or however your police department's run, if it's a city department. And worst case scenario, you can call them and ask them for statistical crime. Now they typically do it per population per 1,000, and you can see the number of incidents and you can make decisions. There's very sophisticated softwares out there that you can work with. You don't need to pay for any of those. Just go directly to the source, which is going to be your sheriff's office or your police department. Then number two is, Rick, how do I get the average price points? And honestly, the easiest free tool is go into Zillow and just put in Zillow, put in your area, and then put an average median price next to it and find the link to it, and it will tell you. Or you can do a statistical Google search. Just be careful because a lot of them are paid ads and they'll steer you in the wrong place. So once you have that average price point and you have the statistical crime area, now you can compare markets. And that's what I tell you to do. Go find 4 or 5 markets that are interesting to you and then run a simple Excel spreadsheet and get the incidents per 1,000 and get the average medium home price. And from that information alone, that's going to give you a great compass, GPS, whatever you want to call it, to find what we call the sweet spot area. And I'm here to tell you in wholesaling, a lot of you go, well, I'm just going to go to the cheapest price as possible. I'm here to tell you I did that and you're not going to like it. It's really, really hard. So the reality is to make a $2,000 or $3,000 assignment on like a high crime area, high poverty area, because there's constant turnover, you're going to work 10 times harder and you're going to stress yourself out. Now, if you're even going to do it locally, I'm here to tell you, you could actually potentially put your life at risk. And that's the last thing I want to do with anybody on this live stream. So here's a rule I always have. If you're going to do this locally, not virtually, locally, if you would be scared to drive that neighborhood at night, or you were scared to go and collect that rent on an average day, especially during the day, don't do it. Because eventually you're going to have to get in your car and go deal with an issue on that property, either meet a cash buyer or meet with the seller. And if you are uncomfortable going there at like 1 o'clock, I don't want you even looking at these types of areas. So I skip that. and I had some issues. I've had multiple incidents where I've had my back window broken. I've had dogs chase me. I've been like stuck with things that freaked me out, and like I had to get medical assistance. So I don't want that for you guys. I already tried it. I'm telling you, it's not worth it. It sucks. And you didn't get in this business to lower like all your standards. So every now and then an opportunity comes up. If you can move it fast, do it. But if you target these types of neighborhoods, they're very, very challenging because the drama's through the roof. And for the couple $1,000s you'll make, I just don't think the risk is worth it. So what we want to do is really find the sweet spots. So let me give you some generalities on what we call the sweet spot, because I'm going to go through this real quick. And if you're on the live, I'm going to get to you. So in the stream, I see you guys, I promise. So how do we find great virtual markets? I call them like the Goldilocks zone. So here's the rules: 50K population, 400K or below average median price. That is kind of your general rule. Now, there's going to be exceptions depending on what market on. So like use this as a guideline, not a rule. So some of you guys are in markets where 400 is a little bit challenging. Like in Florida, it's all like, I can't even meet this number. Like I'm already outside of it. And my populations are significantly higher. But I will tell you, I started well below these. And the one thing I find that people I talk to over and over that start out wholesaling with success, they all have these two things in line: at least a 50K population and 400K or lower price point. Why? Because that's the sweet spot, guys. You have to think about this. You want the most demand for your product as possible so you can find the most cash buyers. Now, when a cash buyer buys your property, what is their goal or intention? They're either going to rent it out or they're going to do a fix and flip and tell it typically to a first-time home buyer, because they love stuff that's ready and done. They want it all laid out, just get their mortgage and move on. Why not? And that is where you're going to find. So always focus on where the first-time home buyer areas they're looking for. So I'm going to give you a couple ideas here and you guys tell me. So I put them on the screen here. These are just ideas for you, but like these types of markets work. Fort Wayne, Indiana, Dayton, Ohio, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Detroit, Michigan, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Detroit, I know that's a little bit like, Rick, Detroit? There's pockets in Detroit. As I said, if you're there and you understand the market, you can figure it out. Detroit would only be the one that you're going to have to dive a little bit deeper in. These are for example purposes, okay? I'm always looking for the next wave of people, because people move around in this country based on it. Listen, Florida's got really attractive. It's getting so pricey. They're going to stop coming to Florida because they can't afford it. So where do they go next? They go to Birmingham, Alabama. They go to Fayetteville, North Carolina. Like, you guys can do the research on this and find it, especially if you're doing virtual markets. So the really rule of thumb to truly understand what the sweet spot in your markets, ask your cash buyers. They'll tell you why, because they're catering to the first-time home buyer, to the house that's going to get the most eyeballs and the most attention. End of story, guys. If you understand this, it's really easy to figure out the best virtual market for you to pick. End of story. Don't go out and start in markets. Just if you grew up in San Diego, San Francisco, I love it. It's an incredible area, but the cat's out of the bag, man. That like you won't even get near the 400 grand price range. And that's been the birth of virtual wholesaling, because we've been squeezed out of most of the local markets. And then let's face it, Wall Street hedge funds, they're chasing these pockets just like you and me. So it's more important now for you to get out and ahead, especially when you're doing virtual marketing. Also, so ask your cash buyers, just ask them and get intel. It's so important in today's market to understand what your cash buyers, what they're looking for, because in the end, they are your customers. So many years you guys were taught to teach cash buyers like trash. And now we're telling you they're the golden ticket to truly understand your wholesaling business and make it profitable. Go after where the rentals are at. Landlords like to invest in rental communities because they fit. Period. End of story. I've owned properties where the whole block are like homeowners and I had the one rental. There wasn't a week that didn't go by they didn't report my renters for something. And they kept driving my renters out and out, and like I eventually just gave up. So you have to understand, if you have an entire rental neighborhood, you watch for trends to see if they switch over to first-time home buyers, and then you can make that switch when it happens. But if you have an entire like first-time home buyer community and a renter moves in, it can be problematic for you. And like I pay attention to that stuff, and you guys have to pay attention to neighborhoods. You should be able to identify a neighborhood if it's predominantly rental or it's predominantly homeowner occupied. And by the way, you can look up county stats and you can figure that out very, very easily. So, and then the good old tried trick, which is really, in my opinion, the best way other than just asking your cash buyers, just reverse engineer your competition. So if you guys have never heard of this, the one thing I try to teach anybody that works with me and Zach is you're going to have to lose your ego in wholesaling, because ego is probably the thing that will take you out the most in wholesaling. You guys have seen it. Wholesalers get really big. I'm making a ton of money. And the problem is their ego gets inflated because they were making 50 grand a year. And now they're making 300 grand a year wholesaling. And they think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's still the exact same person. They've just figured things out. And I give accolades to them. But you can't let your ego get big. And the problem with your ego is completely driven by your subconscious mind for you to always be right at any cost possible. And ego always tries to win. Lose your ego and you don't have to win a conversation. You don't have to win arguments. You actually learn to walk away from them. So here's a little trick. Most wholesalers' egos, dude, they're huge. I've been in this business a long time. It's terrible out there. I had a big ego at once. I had to learn to let it go because it was killing my business. Once you let your ego go and you humble yourself, you can actually receive information, you can get help, and you can work with other people. It doesn't mean you have to agree with what they say, but if you've ever met that person that always has to be right, they will drive you freaking nuts. And there's no other word about it. So guys, the biggest thing, if you're just starting out wholesaling, you haven't even done a deal, check your ego. Now, most of you guys start out your wholesaling, your ego's already in check because you're trying to get help. But once you get success, don't let it go to your head, because you've barely scraped the iceberg. I'm still on a 20-year journey. I make more money every year. And guys, I tripled my salary in the first year. Got a big ego, got my butt handed to me. And honestly, ever since then, I've just kind of I've learned that ego doesn't serve you at all. Now, here's how you take advantage of other people's ego. So if 8 out of 10 wholesalers have a huge ego, and they do, it's just the truth, reverse engineer them. They love to brag. They constantly post on social media about their latest, greatest deal. Why? Well, it's twofold. Number one, it makes them feel really big. Like, look at me. Number two, they're probably going to sell you something. It's just the truth. That's the only reason they post. So it's just the truth. And a lot of you go, well, people got to show their deals. The problem is they never show you the whole story. You don't get to buy. You typically only get to sell. I see people posting stuff in their personal name. I'm like, if you're running a wholesaling business, why would you buy something in your personal name? Most likely it's your personal house and you're flipping it and you're trying to show this big giant profit. That's not wholesaling. And I'm proud of people that do that. I think that's awesome, but that's not wholesaling. That's buying a property and holding on to X amount of years and then doing the appreciation game. And then they don't share with what they put in rehab into it. So I have a problem when people just keep showing stuff. But here's the deal. When people do that, take advantage of it. Get on their cash buyers list, find the markets they're having success, and you can easily reverse engineer their where they're having success in the zip codes. This is how I pick my virtual. This is my number one technique for picking out virtual market. Oh, really? You're killing it over there. Wow. And so what we do is I get on their cash buyers list. I see 4 houses they're marketing. I verify the zip codes, and then I look for trends, and then I hunt all over the internet. And then I'll take a couple weeks. I'll gather the information, and guess what? You just saved me $5 grand in trying to figure out this market. Thank you. And I don't look at anybody as competition. I just look at it as free information. So guys, reverse engineering, it's amazing. Until people lose their egos, you can do this forever. I could give you an example and go and do it right now. I don't have to. It's so easy. I saw 19 posts today. I got 5 messages from people's cash buyers list. It's just too dang easy. So of my 4 virtual markets, I've got them all from reverse engineering. Then I switch over to cash buyer intel. So I'm doing these kind of like reverse order, but it's good. The last one is just ask your title company. Listen, title companies have more intel than you could ever imagine. Not only can they help you with problems with probates and liens and code violations and difficult sellers and crazy cash buyers, they know the traffic coming in and out of there, and they will tell you, hey, Rick, this guy's a real player. He just bought 7 houses this week doing this. He only works with real estate agents. I think it would be incredible if you could connect with him. Dynamite. Hey, let me buy lunch while I'll come in and talk. I just saved 6 months worth of work just doing that right there. And if you guys understand that, these last 2, the title company and reverse engineering, hands down, is probably the best way to figure out what zip codes are truly going to kill it, not only for your local market, but especially for virtual wholesaling.